Okay. Well, thanks very much, Julian, and thank you, Susie, for such a great introduction, and thanks to the Sydney Mining Club for this opportunity. We've been pushing pretty hard to try and get a slot here, Julian, for a while, and it's fantastic to finally get a talking opportunity at Sydney Mining Club, and the fact that it's arrived in the middle of Gay Mardi Gras, I'm told it's a coincidence. But I see our chairman's got a pink tie on just in case. So we have as usual, our usual disclaimers, and really just an introduction to Aurelia on a corporate profile. There's just shy of 400 million shares on issue, a few options and PRs. We're capitalised around $100 million at the moment, a solid cash balance, and we've drawn $105 million of funding facilities from Glencore to build HERA, and we have an additional $50 million in the wings as part of that package for the NYMAGEE project on completion of a definitive feasibility study. So the company is very well capitalised, and it has what we think is a sort of judicious mix of price protection around our gold production. We have some put options at 1,500 Australian, about 26,000 ounces worth, and recently placed some committed forwards through to September this year as well. So they're sort of working together to give us some good protection. Our major shareholders are listed there. Pac Road, obviously, our major shareholder, as Susie mentioned. Yunnan from, if anyone knows the history of the company, they were major shareholders at the time of our IPO back in 2007. And Glencore, obviously our major financiers, also have a significant position on the register. And there's a sort of share price graph which I'm pleased to say still holds a positive 200-day moving day average, and we've sort of been tracking laterally for a little while now. And I think that my feeling around the company's share price and its position, it's very much a coiled spring. There's some very important news around the company coming up around exploration, commencement of commercial production, resource and reserves updates, and they're all very near term. And I think we're incredibly well positioned to benefit from that news. So I want to introduce the project by district. It is in New South Wales, as Julian's mentioned, and it is a jurisdiction which we inherited this project in pre-feasibility stage, and we have taken it through a definitive feasibility study, a resource upgrade already, a permitting process, a financing process, and a construction process. And I'll talk a bit more about operating in New South Wales in a minute, but to introduce COBAR for people, for many of you in the industry obviously know it well, but it's a major metalliferous mining district, and it has been since the late 1800s. And there's a series of major deposits essentially positioned along the eastern margin of a basin, the COBAR Basin, which is shown there. And you can see the real major deposits in Endeavour, CSA, the COBAR Goldfield, a collection of deposits referred to as the Peak Gold Mine. And further down that trend, you can see NYMAGEE and HERA, also located strategically on or immediately adjacent to a structure called the Rookery Fault, which runs down the eastern margin of those, and it's critical for the formation of these deposits. There's a very simple geological model here, which is showing a cross-section through the earth, demonstrating, I guess, the model of how these deposits form. They form on the margin of the deposit with fluids migrating from sort of 4 to 5 kilometres depth, migrating up zones of low pressure, and as a result they tend to form very elongate, very high-grade deposits, and those two work together to give you the magic combination of grade and scale, and that's why so many deposits in COBAR are very long-life, high-grade deposits. And when we first sort of assessing HERA and the opportunity that it presented, we recognised it wasn't on its own, it wasn't a massive deposit, but you very quickly look at the geology and the history of the area and what's been done, and you get extremely comfortable very quickly that HERA, we think, is positioned as every other COBAR system is, and that is, it stands to grow into becoming a very substantial deposit like every other one has. And we're now really starting to unlock that, and I'm really going to spend some time a bit on today talking about some of the exploration and where it's taking us, because we're just starting to really unwrap that exploration story, I think, quite successfully at both HERA and NYMAGEE. But as I mentioned at the intro, we have been through a permitting process at HERA, a successful one, and we've got another permitting process in front of us for NYMAGEE, which our process was imperfect. It was difficult, but it was successful, and we've learned a lot through the process, and I think the agencies that we deal with have also learned, and I'd like to think that the next process will be cleaner. But I take Julian's comment around New South Wales and its troubles, but we do find it workable, and we obviously need to maintain workable relationships with agencies as we go through this. But certainly no one with an AK-47 jumping out of a bush taking the project off you. So that is an advantage, and we do see security of tenure here. So very high-level metrics around HERA as the DFS reported back in 2011. It's a 2.4 million tonne ore body, around 4 grams gold, tick under 7% base metals, half an ounce of silver. That translates to nearly all the indicated component converted down into a reserve, and we're working pretty hard at the moment to updating these resources and reserves at the moment to really build in some of the really successful exploration that we've been reporting for, I guess, the last 12 months or so. Mine life, 7 years from portal. As I said, that's sort of a part of the project that everyone's very relaxed about, and I'm sure I'll give you a lot of evidence that that's going to grow dramatically from here. So once up and running, we're annualised. We'll produce around between 30 and 40,000 ounces of gold as doré, and a significant component of lead and zinc, and less silver. And certainly the metal mix is something that we're really interested in. We're very attracted to the base plus precious metal in a single ore body when we're first assessing HERA, I guess, and the opportunity. And it's curious when we look at, if historically we look at, how metal prices have moved and exchange rates have moved since we first did our DFS in 2011. The metal prices are dramatically different, but our revenue lines is much the same. So in terms of a metal hedge, natural metal hedge actually operating, we've seen that through our feasibility and construction period, and it does seem to work pretty well. So a little bit about the metals. Zinc, certainly many of you may have been watching the zinc market. I know that a lot of investment banks and researchers are looking at it very closely. We think it's an interesting market. We don't have a forecast around the metal price, but this is a really interesting graph produced by Wood Mackenzie, and you can all see historically what happened the last time zinc stocks fell below 600,000 tonnes, and the price response that the market did. This is a very important year for the zinc market, with the closure of Century being the main lever on the supply side, and those stocks heading down. So there are many market participants looking for a price response in the second half of this year, and for that to continue for the next several. Zinc's one of those metals which has really suffered from underinvestment on the supply side for a number of years, and that's starting to come to call now. On the gold side, everyone's aware of the volatility in the gold market. Lots of whiplash around at the moment. We don't have a view on the gold market, but we have been working with Macquarie Bank and Noah's Rule and BNP to place so what we think is judicious price protection, and this sort of gives you an example about where we've placed some forwards through to September this year, and underlying that there's a price floor around a $1,500 put option price. So if you work those together, there's sort of an average minimum of about $1,530 from now through to the end of those puts. So we're in a good position. We'll look at the market and see what opportunities it presents, but we're naturally looking to protect the revenue at what are let's face it, some pretty good prices. So down to the HERA project. We're in the final stages of commissioning at HERA, but in the sort of physical layout, this is what it looks like. It's a fairly compact mine operation. The plant is supplied by a liquid nacrified gas power station, which is something that we implemented fairly recently based on some work that we did with BOC and Agreco, and that removes the sort of US dollar volatility around diesel pricing, with onshore gas being set in Australian dollars. And what you can also see there is the process plant, a significant gap between the process and the admin area, which is the area set aside for the NYMAGEE mill additions once NYMAGEE's ready. A few pictures as well, just to sort of set the scene a little bit. What you can't see in that picture is the village. Part of the construction was the establishment of an 80-person permanent village on site for our workforce. That's come together really, really nicely. Our underground development, obviously another major part of the construction, has, for anyone tracking the company closely, really taken off. The ground conditions and the operators, PROSPECTIVITY, have done a great job together, and we've really been moving well ahead of our mine schedule, really for the last 12 to 18 months. Now I think we're probably you'd be nearly a kilometre ahead in terms of lateral development of where the mine is originally predicted to be, and what that offers us is an enormous amount of operational flexibility now that we're moving to full-scale stoping. So here's a sort of 3D shot showing the reserve shapes. You can see there's actually 8 levels, either fully or partially developed in the mine now, which is an enormous flexibility and the ability to blend and pull ore from different parts of the mine. So we're really nicely set up on the mine, and the mine development has gone very, very strongly indeed. So we're delighted with that position. A little bit about the process plant. That's the plant during the very early stages of commissioning as a night shot. But on a schematic, this is really the key metrics around the plant and the sort of DFS numbers that the mill will produce. There's a sort of large, oversized primary and secondary crushing circuit. It's rated at 120 tonne per hour. It's certainly operating, well in excess of that at the moment, and the thinking there is that would be capable of treating 2 ore feeds. So once NYMAGEE is ready, the crushing circuit will be shared. It goes through a tertiary crushing circuit, and the nature of our flow sheet is very unique. The gold and lead and zinc together is a fairly unique structure. So the way it runs is it's very amenable to gravity. The gold is very amenable, to gravity separation. So the first step is a gravity circuit, which will produce around 60% gravity gold recovery. They then push through to a float, and we produce a mixed lead zinc concentrate, which is called a bulk lead zinc concentrate, that gets a leach step. And that last leach step recovers the remaining 34% of the leach, and then that reports to Dore, and then we sell the lead zinc concentrate through to Glencore as part of the offtake agreements linked to the project financing. So it sounds simple when you say it fast, but the mill is not a straightforward circuit, and we've been running commissioning since really, I guess, September last year, and we're now in the final stages of that process. Commissioning's not, it's by nature, I guess, the problem of a process of finding and solving the issues that you've got in the mill, and we've been doing that very progressively. We're down to 1 or 2, but that's going. We're just about sorted with all our commissioning issues. We've hit during that process some pretty important milestones. First gold pour, bang on schedule, around mid-September last year, and first concentrate shipment also on schedule around November last year. In fact, the day before the mine opening. So there are sort of great milestones for the project to celebrate. As I said, our commissioning has been extended a few weeks, and lots has gone very, very well in the commissioning. As I said, the crushing circuits and running very, very well. The lead zinc recoveries have almost from day one exceeded design specs, so that's been fabulous, getting over 95% in lead and zinc, which is fabulous. And we're now up to sort of around that 40 tonne an hour on the process circuit, which is design, and we're now moving above that number, which is where we're keen to get to. As I mentioned, the first gold pour and the first concentrate milestones were hit on schedule, and our gravity gold and leach gold circuit has given us a few issues, but we're steadily increasing day to day, and we're very close now to moving to the numbers that we want to see. During that process, there has been some refinements installed. We have some liquid oxygen now injecting. We have some changes to the gravity circuit that have been and some are being made, and we've upgraded and we're in process of doing some more upgrades on the tertiary crushing. A little bit about sort of how the ore body's performing as we move down through the underground. Obviously, we've initiated our stope delineation drilling for our final stope planning. Here's a selection of some of those drill holes. I won't read them out, but it's fair to say that some of the results have been, really, really staggering. Double-digit gold, double-digit lead zinc. Really, really exciting numbers to come out of the stopes, and all these numbers will be worked into, or are being worked into, that updated resource and reserve process. So that side has gone particularly well. But it's not just the existing reserves and updating the existing reserves. Obviously, the next step is I really want to talk to you about exploration, and there's been a real focus on that. And I know Pacific Road, when they introduced this investment, some of the original premise around their investment was certainly, look, here is a company that's funded, has a good ore body. We can see the upside. The company can see the upside. Let's fund it. And that's sort of been happening progressively over the last couple of years, and we're really at the stage now where we're starting to report some great results. And here's a photo to introduce it. This is from a drill hole we pulled out of the ground last year, about 250 metres north of the existing development. You're probably looking at 50% zinc in that photo from hole 59 wedge 1. But this is from the HERA North Zone, which is an area of particular excitement at the moment. But to introduce, I guess, the exploration possibilities and why we were so attracted to COBAR in the first instance is here's a sort of 3D cutaway showing how those other major deposits on the Rookery Fault are developed. And what you can see is some of maybe what I was talking to you about earlier is you see a particular vertical continuity to the systems. In the case of CSA and Peak, they extend well in excess of 1.5 kilometres vertical. And when you sort of factor in the case of CSA, a 5% head grade, and you pull it down to 1.5 k's, you end up with a pretty major deposit. And in the case of the Peak, 5 grams gold and 1.5% copper, push it down 1.5 k's, you end up with a major deposit. And here in NYMAGEE, really at this stage, are only well developed and well understood down to the top 500 metres. And we're in the process of unravelling that, and our understanding is building day by day. And, if we logically extend this system down to 1.5 kilometres, we'll end up with very major deposits, and we're positive that we'll get there. Also cognizant at the time, CSA took 120 years or so to get there, and I know private equity's patient, but it's not that patient. So a good case study is the Peak. If you look at the very early days of the Peak discovery, it actually started a little bit with what was called the Western Lead Zinc Zone, which is a high-grade gold lead zinc ore body. And in terms of geological analogues to what we have at HERA, this is the closest thing probably in the world, and it's also the closest thing geographically. It's only 70 k's along strike. And it's a relatively small lead zinc ore body, but as the system grew to depth, it flowered into a very major multi-million ounce gold copper system at depth. And if you look at HERA on a scale comparison basis, that's the current outline of HERA. And you can see the sort of depth extent and the potential for HERA to scale up into something really, really significant. Now, whether it actually translates into a copper-gold system at depth, we don't know, but we're hopeful. But if it stays as a high-grade gold lead zinc system, that's fine as well. So I guess we're fairly agnostic about the metal mix. It's just the grade we're looking for. So I want to talk a little bit about HERA North. We published some new results last week, I think, on HERA North. But what you can see here is the existing development and the stope shapes that will form part of the existing HERA reserve. And about 250 metres out to the north, almost 18 months ago, some holes went in there, and I think we started hitting 30% lead zinc and 300 grams silver. Not a lot of gold, but generated some real excitement. And as we've tracked that system down, late last year we hit hole 59, wedge 1, which was that hole that I showed you the photo of, grading 15 grams gold, 30% lead zinc, real sort of eye-watering numbers. And the program that we're running right now is chasing that system down that plunge and looking to link that up into our existing reserves at the far west. So last week we published the first drill hole of this program, hole 60, it's 40 grams dirt and 20% lead zinc. So very confirmatory for us. That was nearly 120 metres of step out there, so it was pretty bold, but it's linking through. And those crosses that you can see in red are the current program that are running. So we're starting to get some real geological confidence around the continuity of the system. And part of this process, and a lot of part of the observations being made underground, is that we're now developing a pretty strong case study for the next target, which at the moment is called Beyond, which suggests that there's a further repetition to the north. And if you project that to the surface, there's certainly some evidence in some historic RAB numbers generated in the 1970s of gold at surface. So there's considerable hope around Beyond, and we'll be drilling that target shortly, and we really hope that comes in as well. But if you look at that on a comparative basis, every drill hole, every dot on that map is a drill hole that exists outside our reserve. And extend that map to the right, there's 4.5 kilometres of not a single drill hole before you hit the NYMAGEE ore deposit. So that represents an incredibly fertile corridor and some real open country to the north. And that's really without taking the system down to depth. One of the other areas we're working on is to the south of HERA, and here's another little geological moniker about how we think HERA is formed. We mentioned at the start that you need to create dilation to create fluid flow. This is what we see the structural setup is around where the fluids came from. They basically, came up through a dilation zone marked by a very strong magnetic high called HEBE, which has been the attention of the original drilling at HERA back in the 70s, drilled into the top of that system and got some percentage lead zinc and some weak gold, but not followed up. And part of our current program is chasing that, the core of that magnetic anomaly, and that may well represent the copper zone at HERA, we don't know, but we're keen to chase it. But there also actually may be a repeat of HERA, and if you look at the lead geochemistry, it's mapping that fluid flow really nicely. And we're really quite excited about what we're at the moment calling HEBE East, and it's a potential repetition of HERA to the south. More generally, more regionally I should say, we've got about 26 kilometres of strike length at HERA, or at HERA NYMAGEE, and gravity is one of the great markers for COBAR systems. We're having a little bit of trouble to establish exactly why it works, but it works. And a lot of the HERA systems, the COBAR systems, are marked by a pretty predominant gravity high. And some work we did late last year, you can see HERA deposit, NYMAGEE deposit, quite clearly marked by a big red dot. And what this work also unfolded is a much bigger red blob to the south in a zone called Pyramid. And that'll also be some attention of some working that target up to hopefully to be drill ready later this year. So that brings us to really our second project, NYMAGEE. Now NYMAGEE was an historic mine. You can see in the photos, I think that was taken around the turn of the last century. And in its day, from between 1880-something and 1917, it produced around 400,000 tonnes of ore, about 6%. It's a very high-grade, selective, massive sulphide ore body. And we bought the project in 2009 with, or an 80% interest in it. It came together with the HERA acquisition, and first hole under the historic mine, I think, was 8 metres at 7% copper. And from there, NYMAGEE has advanced all the way through to a very significant resource drill out, the establishment of the maiden resource there, of just under about 100,000 tonnes contained copper. So the way we see NYMAGEE evolving from here is that we do see it as a bolt-on to the HERA project. We have obviously established an infrastructure base at HERA. We've established a process circuit which will need capital to process the copper ore type. But we also see uncanny similarities to the tops of particularly the CSA system, which, as I mentioned, started in 1880 as a lead mine of all things. And as exploration moved down in the first kilometre, it became a polymetallic system, and then in the second kilometre it became a very world-class copper system. And we have great hopes that NYMAGEE could well evolve along the same way. And given that we're only in the sort of top 600 or 700 metres at the moment, it sounds deep drilling, but it's for a COBAR system. You're really in the upper part. And if you look at NYMAGEE in long section, we'll try and get a sense of where it's at and where our sort of excitement levels are at. That red blob represents the existing resource. That sort of shaded red represents the sort of low-grade mineralised envelope within which we're now starting to find more massive sulphides. To the north, about 500 metres to the north, NYMAGEE North, of all things, didn't come up with a cool name like Beyond, but the guys have been chasing this system for, I don't know, almost a year now. But we're now down to sort of 500-600 metres. We have latched onto a massive sulphides there. Curiously, it's not quite evolving into a major copper system, but it's high-grade lead, zinc, silver. So we're certainly happy with that. And as I said, we're sort of relatively agnostic about metals. It's really the grade. But there are 3 very standout targets that will be part of our current program. One is beneath NYMAGEE itself, where we use downhole EM that's latched onto a new untested conductor. Our success using downhole EM at NYMAGEE has been really good, almost 1-to-1. So we're positive that's a conductor. We don't know if it's copper, pyrrhotite, lead or zinc at this stage, but we're fairly confident that represents massive sulphides. In the middle is one of our geos has done some lovely structural work and identified a new target in the middle that's supported by downhole EM. That'll also be part of the current program. And NYMAGEE North, we're chasing that massive sulphide system that we found at NYMAGEE North, both to the north at depth and to the south, and it could really be anything. So I guess as a bit of a wind-up for a summary to where Aurelia's positioned. We have in HERA a pretty exciting Stage 1 project. We're in the very final stages of commissioning at HERA. It will represent high margin, high grade gold, lead, zinc, silver production. It's open system in terms of size, so it's open to the north, south and at depth. Our underground has set the project up beautifully, and we think that the company's starting to generate a bit of a track record around its exploration, and overlaying that on top of this system, on top of this setting, I think we stand really well placed with HERA. That last dot point is a curiosity, really, more than anything. That I think we're the only gold, lead, zinc, silver, zinc producer on the ASX, which we're not a massive lead zinc producer. I think on a split net revenue basis, it's close to, it's 60-40, maybe close to 70-30. So we are quite weighted towards gold. But when you talk about some of those exploration results, you'll see there's a very strong lead zinc flavour to some of them. So that may change, but at the moment we're gold weighted. NYMAGEE is the second story, 4.5 kilometres up the road, so effectively sort of next door. We have a sort of dual challenge here to advance the exploration and the feasibility pretty rapidly from here. But in the case of both systems, from the results that we've seen to date, from the precedent setting in this district, and from the understanding that we're building as a company, we really see both these systems evolving into very long life assets. So we do eventually think that they might take us into mid-tier status, on these assets alone, but we'll certainly keep our eyes open. But that's kind of it. Thank you very much.